Welcome to our newest webinar. I'm Randy Manaply, and I'm here with Prem Carnot, the Pickleball Guru, author of the best-selling book, Smart Pickleball, the Pickleball Guru's Guide, and the original traveling pickleball coach.
Welcome, Guru Nation.
This webinar is all about pickleball etiquette. Now, what we've done is we've kind of gone through and looked through a lot of the questions that have come up in Pickleball Forum and kind of brought them all here on this one webinar so you kind of know what to do and what not to do on the court when it comes to etiquette. Let's go ahead and start off with number one, and that's the home rules about paddle stacking. This is not stacking on the court, this is paddle stacking. Explain what that is, Prem.
Well, you see a lot of people, once they come out of the court, they just stack paddles up on a line, and the next four or the next two, it's two on, two off. There's various ways of doing it, but generally people just stack paddles at the edge of the fence to make sure that the next four go in after a match is over, after a court is free.
And what should you not do with paddle stacking?
Most probably the one interesting one is sometimes you just want to play with three other players who you want to play with, and you end up trying to stack all your four paddles together, not mixing up with the other group. And especially when you're playing in open play, it's a complicated business.
Now, if you have like three people that you want to play with, what should you do?
I would probably try and set a time aside separately outside the open play time. Generally most of the courts are available in the afternoon. Well, for most cases when the weather is great, or sometimes there are players who play in the evening after work. So I would try and set up a time specific if I would just want to drill and practice with players of a similar skill level. So that's what I would try and do, and not try and enforce that while I'm playing open play. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you shouldn't move your paddle around. Like if there's a person you don't want to play with for whatever reason, you shouldn't try to avoid that paddle. You should just go ahead and group it up in that four.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, and that's why I say respect the home rules with whatever rules that they have at whatever rec center or wherever you're playing pickleball. So let's move on to number two. Respect the calls on your opponent's side of the court. So what do you do when it's clearly the wrong call, Prane?
I just move on to the next point. Simple as that. I have no time when trying to, and I would probably definitely recommend you not to ever think about spending time and energy trying to convince my opponent that the call was wrong. There's no time for that, and no joy in it. And I often say it's as simple as that. Like none of those wins, none of those losses, you're going to take it to your graveyard. So there's no real reason for you to spend time trying to, uh, you know, uh, battle it out. Try and consider that if it's a wrong call or a right call.
Now, what if it's an obvious, really obvious wrong call? Can you ask to replay the point or something like that and let the pickleball gods figure it out? Or
If the opponents are willing, and if they are in a place where they are actually convincing themselves like, oh, maybe I'm not completely sure, and let's replay the point, then it makes sense. Otherwise, there's no point in trying to argue. If that's their call, let it be. There's a sort of a standing rule in even in tennis, for example, when an opponent makes a bad call, and generally they are tested with it very immediately. The reaction is pretty immediate generally by their opponents, because they will make automatically another bad call, even if it is an obvious one. And so I don't think that's a healthy one to do. So just let it go.
just let it go. And the fact of it is, even if it's rec play, the USAPA says it's on your opponent's side of the court, it's their call.
That's right.
Even in ref matches,
Yes.
it's still the opponent's side
Yeah.
if they don't have line judges out there.
Absolutely. So that's one of the reasons why it is like oftentimes I often say is like, even if you're playing in a tournament or in a ref game, um, you know, uh, oftentimes I would say is like, if it's really really close to the line and you're not completely sure, just give the benefit of doubt to your opponent, and rather than trying to garner or gain that point, because it doesn't make anyone happy.
And number three, if an unresolvable issue comes up, speak privately to the person after the game. And what I'm going with that is don't create some type of kerfuffle on the court in the middle of play and start getting into it. Just wait and say, well, I noticed that you did this, and I'd appreciate if you didn't do that. Is that a good idea to wait till after everything's done?
I don't even really understand the idea of wanting to talk about unresolvable issue, because there's nothing unresolvable in a pickleball court as far as I'm concerned. It's only a game. There's more important things in life than just a game with a plastic ball with a funny name. So I wouldn't even spend my time trying to convince my opponent. But in case you really want to address something which really came up, and if the opponent is willing to listen, first check in with your opponent and say, hey, would you be willing to hear what I had, my experience was? And you can have that conversation in a private one. But again, it's particularly not about the game, but it's how you feel about it.
And before we move on to number 4, talk to us about your upcoming boot camps, Praying. We've actually sold out in Tucson that's coming up in November. And one of the Vero Beach boot camps, I believe it's the one on January 24th, is sold out. But there are 2 spaces available in the January 10th boot camp in Vero Beach, 3 spaces available in the one in February 14th, our Valentine's special boot camp. And also right now on the schedule is Costa Rica in April, Richmond in May, and Denver in September. We'll be adding more locations, but tell everyone what participants get out of one of your boot camps, Frame.
Um, well, I can definitely speak about my or our experience as a team, and what we impart in terms of pickleball experience goes. It's definitely a very intensive program. It's a 4-day program, and we go through different sessions. We start working on fundamentals. We start off playing about what are the classic ways of hitting a good drop shot, and when not to hit a drop shot, and all the techniques related to how to hit a great drop shot, and what would be a fifth drop shot, or a seventh drop shot, or a third ball drop shot. Either way, we go through the whole sequences and how to play at the net, and what would be an ideal or an effective dink would be, and how to move around your opponents. Then how do you dance along with your partner so that you know exactly what to be on the court. It's all about placement and positioning. There's a lot of one-on-one session also which goes out there, so which is very specifically geared to private individual players' skill sets. And one thing I might say to one might be completely the opposite to another person. But as long as it is effective to their game, that's what I'm looking for, and that's what we do in terms of boot camp. And there's a final session of where they put all to that together and start playing more smartly. And obviously during this period, all the lunches are being catered to the participants, and every detail is taken care of, so that, and obviously they get a wonderful bag after, with lots of fun, interesting stuff for pickleball. Courtesy the pickleball guru business will offer that to them, and it's a fun experience. And as you know, you've interviewed a lot of our participants over the time you have been with us, and I'm pretty sure there's pretty much 100% satisfaction in terms of what we have offered, and continues to keep growing. So we are here in Sacramento. We just finished one here, and you can see it has been another successful one where all the participants were very, very happy.
I think tailoring it to my needs was really important, and I found that he did that at every level, whether I was just beginning something or whether I was accelerating or regressing. He was able to customize and coach me to my needs. So I have gone to a couple of clinics, I've taken drills, but I've looked at a lot of YouTube videos, and then I got involved in watching Prem's videos, and then I kind of asked around, and I decided that his seemed to be the most encompassing boot camp that I could experience, so I chose it.
And one of the things the participants are very impressed about the fact that you don't have to think about anything but playing pickleball and being coached on how to play pickleball and how to move your game to the next level. Um, Like Prem said, all the meals are taken care of. We have fruits and snacks and water, so you don't have to worry about bringing a cooler of your own or anything like that. Basically, when you get to the court, you just need to have your paddle with you,
That's right.
and that's about it. And then it's all pickleball from there. You don't have to think about really anything else but pickleball.
And
And that
sometimes people don't come up to the paddle too, and we had to offer them our
that's
paddles
right.
to play with. So it's been a fun experience, and it's something which I definitely recommend to players who really, really want to improve. And I will guarantee you, by the time you finish with these boot camps, generally, you have a whole new experience and armory to add into your arsenal, and it's very fun for all the participants who come there, but it's also a lot of fun for us.
Yeah, I've had a great time at the Sacramento boot camp. It's been a fun experience.
So did I.
But we have fun at all of them though. But yeah, Sacramento was fun. Let's get back into the program. We're up to number 4, and I put down encourage, don't belittle. And in my former life, my boss had a great line. He said, "No one shows up to work intending to do a bad job." And you could say the same thing on the pickleball courts. No one shows up with the intention of playing poorly. In other words, no one gets out of bed and says, "I'm going to go have a really bad day playing pickleball." When I'm playing with someone, I try to only encourage and not say things like, "Well, that was just too high." I think it works better to pump someone up rather than bringing someone down.
Just like in life, any positive reinforcement in any case is always going to be very supportive to anyone, your friends, your pickleball players, your family, your kids, everyone. Positive reinforcement is always going to be something which would raise someone's vibration, I would say, rather than lower it. And that's true very much on a pickleball court too. No one really comes there to play poorly. No one tries to hit a ball high or tries to hit a ball into the net. They're doing the best they can, and on any given day, like anything else, you have a highs and lows. Just like in life, we go through these periods of up and downs. The it's there's a wonderful saying, they say that when people talk about finding a balance, balance itself is an act of movement, because when you're balancing, you're still moving to balance. So it's a journey of up and downs always.
And let's move on to number 5. If it's a clear mismatch, moderate your game. What do you mean by moderate your game here, Prem?
Oh, that's pretty simple. Like, if you're playing with players who are definitely not as skilled as you are, or and who are not probably able to be as consistent as you are, it does, rather than trying to show how great you are as a player or how wonderful strokes you can hit, it'll be wonderful if you can work on one or two things you really want to, hone your skills on, and try not to really show off as being like you're the ultimate superstar. And I don't think that serves any purpose to anyone.
And number 6, I say spread the ball around. And this is similar to the previous one, Prem, just a bit different circumstance. What do you mean by spread the ball around, Prem?
Well, you're playing, if you imagine if you're a low end player and if you're playing against someone who is much, better than you, don't try to just avoid the better player, because otherwise there's no real point for the better player to even want to play with you. So when, as your term says, spread the ball, it's like just distribute the ball, if you can, to your better players, and sort of make the game more fun for everyone involved in the game, rather than trying to isolate someone. We're not playing a tournament match. I totally get in a tournament, probably an opponent is targeted, and that's totally understandable. It's wanting to win a match because whatever it is, it's heading towards a gold medal match, or heading toward a medal round match, or heading down to just play a good match. And I totally understand that in a tournament setup, but I think in a recreational setup, recreational play setup, I would probably recommend you to just sort of, you know, hone your skill. If you're a better player, and if you're not so good player, just distribute even to the good players, because even your mistakes, even if they hit a better shot than you, it allows you to at least understand that there are certain shots you might have to do differently so that you can get better at it.
And lastly, number 7, give us some etiquette for playing up and playing down, Prane.
Well, we have written definitely a few number of articles and and podcasts around this particular topic, but this conversation always keeps coming up. Sometimes you're frustrated because you're playing with players who are not your level, and when you're playing, especially in recreational open play setup, where it's frustrating and you just want to play with the better players because the like anyone understands that if you play with better players, your game goes up, and if you play with not so good players, it doesn't go well. But in an open play setup, especially, this conversation generally happens when you're playing open play with players who are not forcefully matched up by skill levels, and if that happens, generally, if you're a better player, try to just work on one or two things, on your game, and try to be very encouraging to the partner you play with, even if they're not as good as you are, and and please do not try and coach them unless they ask for it, and don't have to be patronizing either. Try and do the best that you can to try and keep the game fun for everyone. And if you're a lower level player, please, and please distribute the ball to your better player, because they come down to play with you. So make sure that you distribute your player. Don't try hitting some shots and hooting it, like going on a cheerful laugh, or
Yeah!
exactly, littling your partner or your opponent, because that's not really helpful. That's great that you were able to get some good points against your opponents, but probably your opponent who's a better player is not probably playing to win, but trying to hone some skill they want to do rather than trying to win a match, because it's not about that for them. So you find that ideal balance of being able to play with good players and better players. And if better players want to play with better players, just find a different time slot so that you can compete against each other, if that's what you want. Certain places, certain venues where there's more pickleball courts, you can see there are actually courts assigned for skill levels, very specifically, and then but that all depends on how many courts you have and how you can do it. Even in certain places, like in community centers where there are maybe 4 or 3 courts, they probably just line up one court as a challenge court. So
Mm-hmm.
the players who win there stay there, and the people who lose will just go back to the bottom of the draw and start revolving back again. If they're good players, they will stay at the challenge court. So like that, the challenging players can still compete. That's one way of doing it. I'm not saying this is the only way to do it, but through my experience of having been in different facilities across the country, there are different ways people do it, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. It's always a question. We are all emotional animals, so sometimes we tend to be more, we regret sometimes that things don't work in the way we want to, and sometimes we are joyous because it works the way we want to. So it's like life, it just goes up and down, and just take the best you can.
So those are the only etiquette things that I could think of, Prane. Anything else that you want to add to the mix here?
Bottom line is pickleball is a fun game. It's a really an intergenerational game. It's not really meant for young or old or mid-age people. Anyone can play it, as you guys all know. It could be the young kids or older people. I mean, you get to see some formidable athletes these days. A mom and daughter team, a father and son team like William and Rusty Sobak, or the Waters mom
Mm-hmm.
and daughter team, uh, were able to be competing in high level, pro level plays and still be enjoying it. And I think that's a pretty rare sport where you can have intergenerational competitions like that and still be very competitive. So something which I would definitely recommend you to look at. This is only a game. It's a game with a funny name, but it's a game which has gone beyond our borders here in the U.S. into different parts of the world, and it is really catching fire everyone. and just enjoy the game, have fun with it, and just don't be too stickler of everything about rules, and bottom line is you gotta have to have fun with it.
And that's all I have. The only thing I'll add, if you're interested in one of the boot camps, head on over to pickleballguru.com where you can find more information about upcoming boot camps. Like I mentioned, we have a couple that are filling up really, really quick in Vero Beach in January and February, so you may want to get on those real quick. There's also upcoming clinics. We have Tucson in November. We have 2 Vero Beach clinics, one on that starts on January 7th, another Vero Beach clinic on January 21st. Richmond, May 12th, and Denver, September 22nd. And new for Guru Nation, we have a Levitate Your Game workshop for 4.0 players and above. We're looking to have this on January 18th and 19th. More details are going to be at pickleballguru.com. But Prem, go ahead and tell everyone what this Levitate Your Game workshop is.
It's generally a 2 day, at least 4 to 5 sessions where we're going to be involving mostly strategies about placement and positioning, tactics, and different opponents. And I mean, every other questions will be addressed for those players. Generally, most of these players at that level already have their skill sets in place. It's trying to build their consistency, build certain confidence in their strategies, and work on different types of strategies. So it's going to be a very small group, maximum of 12 people. So it'll be on 3 courts, and so definitely will be another fellow professional who will join me to help me with this workshop. And it's going to be an intensive one, but it's just meant for people with the skill levels 4.0 and over.
While at pickleballguru.com, be sure and sign up for Prem's newsletter, where you get a monthly newsletter that has lots of tips, tricks, and strategies to advance your pickleball game, as well as access to podcasts and webinars like this. At pickleballguru.com, you can also head on over to our gear page, and you can get yourself a Smart Pickleball t-shirt. You can get yourself a Guru baseball cap, and they also have other really cool stuff. Here's my favorite Dink T t-shirt, which is a Dink Star. I'm a bit nerdy, as Prem likes to point out a good bit. But they have lots and lots of other pickleball gear that looks cool on the court, so be sure and head on over to our gear page for all that. And also at pickleballguru.com, if you want to look into private lessons. Prem travels everywhere, and especially if you're down in Florida sometime, look for details on private lessons.
So that's all I have from me. Just go have fun on a pickleball court, and remember, it's only pickleball.
All right, thanks, Guru Nation.
Thank you.